All right, we're off. This is Taylor Shanklin with the team here at Kimbia. I'm really excited to be presenting this today here with some colleagues and partners of ours because it's a very exciting report that we're happy to unveil the results on today. So thanks for joining us. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items. We will be sending out the recording and the slides, and we will also send out the report to everyone who signed up for the webinar today. If you're logged in right now and you'd like to go ahead and download the report and you haven't gotten that yet, I placed it over in the webinar panel. You should see it in the handout section of the GoToWebinar panel. So feel free to go ahead and just grab that. Okay, if you've got any questions throughout the webinar, we would like to be, answer questions throughout, and we'll also open up questions at the end. So just type those into the questions box. Kelly, myself, and Jamie will all be manning the questions box, and we'll be happy to answer questions that come up along the way if we're talking about a particular piece of the data, or if you've got questions at the end that you want to ask. All right, with no further ado, I am Taylor Shanklin. I'm the Director of Product Marketing and Marketing Strategy here at Kimbia, and I've been working in the online fundraising space for the past decade with many, many different types of organizations. So digging into this type of data is really interesting to me and fun, and I'm joined here by a couple of colleagues and partners here. I'd like them to introduce themselves as well. Kelly, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kelly, and I'm the Marketing Manager here at Kimbia. I have been here for 5 years and was part of the team that released our last donor data report. So I am excited to be here and releasing this new one.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. And we're also joined here today by Jamie Finney from the Strengthen Members team. Jamie, you want to say hello?
Yeah. Thanks, Taylor. Hello, everyone. I'm Jamie Finney. I'm a senior analyst with Strengthen Members. Strengthen Members is a digital marketing agency for nonprofits. We've been around for about 5 years and have worked with many organizations that you've heard of and many of the ones that you maybe haven't heard of. And we specialize in developing online fundraising strategies, growing supporter audiences, and custom websites and applications. With this report, I was the data nerd behind the scenes, staring at the spreadsheets and doing the actual numerical analysis. And I'm excited to present this today. Taylor and Kelly have done a great job at translating my findings into actionable insights for you all. So very excited for what we found.
Big round of applause to Jamie for all of the number crunching and the data crunching. Really appreciate his help on that and their partnership from Strengthen Members on going in on doing this, digging into the data together. So why do we care about this? There are a lot of different ways to do online fundraising these days, right? People are talking about crowdfunding and peer-to-peer and growing their sustained giving programs. And then there's giving days, and you might be thinking, what's the difference between peer-to-peer and a giving day and crowdfunding? And so we've been wanting to dig into looking at how those different online fundraising campaigns and what we're referring to here in our analysis as channels, how they really stack up against each other. And we care about that because we want to ultimately know who's giving to what, and therefore, where should you focus? So this is data that we're going to be sharing with you at a high level. And I think, as you're looking at this and kind of listening to our insights on the topic and kind of on what we found, be thinking about, okay, how does that maybe apply to what you are doing at your organization, what your audience looks like, what your segments are, and what your overall goals are. So what we did is we wanted to look at everyday donations, peer-to-peer donations, and giving day donations. Everyday donations are any general donations people are giving to the organization through their website, whether that's just a general donate now button on your website and they go to that general fund form, or if that is a sustaining monthly giving campaign, or maybe it's a special form you put up on your website for like an annual fund or something like that. So that's kind of what the everyday donations category encompasses. Next to that, we wanted to look at peer-to-peer donations. So peer-to-peer is, really essentially friends asking friends to donate to your organization on their behalf. So that could be, anything from a donate your birthday campaign to a 5K run where people are participating in the run and also raising money for your organization. And then the last channel we wanted to look at was that of giving days. And giving days are the time-based online crowdfunding events that we do have a lot of here at Cambia. They're typically 24 hours. Sometimes they're up to 36 or 48 hours. Again, a very social type of a giving campaign that's all run online. But the difference between kind of really that and peer-to-peer is that it's very much based on the time-based incentives. So those are the channels that we were looking at. So let's talk a little bit about how we did it. And Kelly and Jamie and I will all be kind of chiming in throughout this presentation on our particular insights on this. But I want to talk a little bit about how we got here and what we did. What was it, Kelly? Back in 2015, we released some 2014 data. And at the time, we were looking in particular at Giving Day crowdfunding. We decided it was time to kind of dust things off a little bit and broaden our approach. Because we work with a lot of organizations doing giving days here at Cambia, but we also work with a lot of organizations doing everyday donation campaigns and peer-to-peer. And so we said, wouldn't it be interesting to see how they kind of line up against each other in terms of looking at the demographics and who's giving to what and that sort of thing. So that's kind of what we decided to do. And then we partnered up. We've been talking to Jamie and Peter and the team over there at Strengthen Members about doing some sort of analysis together. And so we partnered up with them. Jamie, the one who did the number crunching, really kind of dug into that. And I want him to talk a little bit about how we did it, because privacy is of the utmost importance to us, and I want him to kind of talk through the methods a little bit and how he sliced and diced the data.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit of background. Well, I love diving into the data. We definitely realize that this comes with a really high respect for donor privacy. So looking at Cambia's 2016 donations for this report, we only analyzed things on an aggregate level, meaning that no individual donor data was revealed. And when we use data partners for some of the insights, you'll find all of the files were always encrypted. So sum that up, privacy is a big deal for us and the Cambia team, so we wanted to be very forthcoming about that. As for the analysis, some background on how we arrived at what you're going to hear about. First off, we looked at all of the donor data and pulled the high-level questions out. How much came in through each channel? How did the gifts differ between these channels? The simple numerical stats. Then we worked with a few data partners to tell us who was giving on each channel and really paint the human picture of our 3 unique donors and channels. So this is the demographic and social data you'll hear about shortly. And then lastly, we did a little bit of slicing and dicing to see what else we could uncover. So that's looking across the different channels, looking within them. What are the patterns, and what do they really mean for you as the organizations, and how can we help you raise through these 3 channels more effectively? So that's the methods, and we're always open to hear comments and questions after the webinar is over on how we did this and dive in more.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, so it really was an effort where there's a lot of data, a lot of different types of donations coming through. And like I said, we really wanted to look at those different 3 channels across different types of audiences, demographics, and see how they really kind of stacked up against each other, just in an effort to let you all know what the trends are, because you might then be able to take that back to your organization and what you're trying to do and what your audience is, and seeing what might work for you based on the trends. Kelly, do you have anything else to add?
No, just wanted to call out that if you look at the numbers here in the middle column, you'll see that this is over $240 million in online donations that you're going to see. And then you'll see the breakdown of the number of donations that came through each channel, totaling 1.2 million in donors.
All right, so moving along, we are first going to get into looking at, we kind of broke this report down into three different parts. First, we looked at comparing the actual donations, then we looked at comparing the audiences, and then we looked at comparing the organizations. So we're going to kind of get into looking at like the numbers in terms of the donation amounts, things like that. Then we're going to look at the, demographic information, and then we're going to look at the actual makeup of the organizations who are receiving donations and kind of how that split out.
And make sure that if you guys have any questions as we're going through this, chat them in. We can stop and address them as we go, so don't be shy.
So one of the first major things that we wanted to look at was what's the average gift size for these online donations. And something that you'll see here that's interesting is, everyday giving and giving day gifts, their average gift size is pretty close. You've got 141 and change versus 147 and change. But then you'll see that peer-to-peer average gift size is a little bit smaller there at 92 and change. Couple of things that we think this might be because in general, peer-to-peer gifts are typically asked for by someone who is a supporter of your organization, and they're often asking friends and family members who maybe aren't necessarily yet a supporter of your organization. And we think that that might have a factor in that average gift size being smaller than the other two, and the other two really kind of stacked up pretty close to each other. The other thing that we kind of gathered from this and gained from this was that giving days, that one being the highest average gift size, are very, very driven by matches, corporate sponsorships. And so we think the reason why that is the largest average gift size is because people know their dollars are going to stretch further if they give to a giving day, and therefore we think maybe they give a little bit more.
And people get into it, right? So, I mean, there's prizes and like Taylor said, matches during the event. So people get really excited and want to see the nonprofit that they're supporting win a prize or hit their match funds. So we typically see these days produce pretty high average gifts.
Yeah. Another thing that Jamie, Kelly, and I were all kind of talking about when we started really digging into this was what's interesting is peer-to-peer and giving days are both very socially driven campaigns. And that is meaning that people for both types of campaigns are often like sharing the message with their friends out on social media, saying, hey, I'm getting involved in this, will you support it too? And the reason why I still think that the giving day average gift size is larger than peer-to-peer average gift size, even though those are both very socially driven campaigns, is because of that kind of like time-based incentive. So that's average gift size. Kelly's going to talk a little bit about this, where we found, some trends that we saw in large gifts online.
Yeah, so what we found was that everyday donation channel did rely more heavily on large gifts. So large gifts are anything over $1,000. And we are seeing that 48% of the channel revenue is made up of those major gifts. And you'll see that that's significantly lower in giving days and peer-to-peer, where it was giving days was 2% large gifts and peer-to-peer 1%, and making up 32% and then 24%.
And again, I kind of think, we can kind of derive some thoughts and insights around what we think this means. My takeaway is that, again, giving day and peer-to-peer often are made up of a lot more new donors than your everyday donors that are coming back and supporting you regularly, whether it's through that annual fund you're kind of always asking them to give to, or their monthly sustained donors and that sort of thing. So I do think that is probably the cause for those everyday donation large gifts being more heavily weighted over there in the everyday giving field. Jamie, do you have any other insights or thoughts on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just gonna kind of layer on top of that how with large gifts playing such a big role in the everyday, it just really calls out how much nurturing really needs to happen in order to get those large gifts. That 48% of revenue is really the result of a long effort and possibly multiple fundraising campaigns and marketing campaigns to make that up compared to the slightly smaller scope and smaller time associated with the peer-to-peer and giving days.
I also want to call out just a reminder that all of the donations that we're looking at in this report are online donations. So these large gifts have all been given online.
Yep, great point, great call up. All right, moving along. So let's talk about mobile giving. This is a hot topic. Everyone's kind of wondering, I think, probably, how much is actually coming in on a mobile phone. You'll see here what we found across all channels. Desktop giving is still much higher than mobile giving. However, what I will say to this is that these numbers that we're seeing on mobile, they're higher than they were last year, and that was higher than the year before, and that was higher than the year before. And over the past several years, as I've kind of been personally looking at this and studying this, that number just continues to grow. So while you might look at this and think, oh, well, mobile is only making up, you know, between 25 and 29%, don't let that change your thinking in terms of where you should go from a mobile perspective. So that's just kind of some of my thoughts on that topic.
Yeah, and I mean, just calling out that in peer-to-peer, it seems to be even higher in mobile. So just making sure that everything's mobily optimized, especially and for your peer-to-peer campaigns, any of your like giving day, I can't think of the word. Like the
fundraising center.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're running peer-to-peer campaigns, and we'll talk about this a little bit too when we look at the age demographics coming up here in a couple of slides. If you've got a peer-to-peer campaigns that you're running or thinking about running, having the fundraising experience for your participants be mobile responsive, mobile friendly, or done through a mobile app, I think is really important to really get the most out of that campaign.
So we did have a question come in from Ken, and I just want to clarify. So you're asking if there's an affordable option for mobile giving. And what we're talking about here is just online donations, whether they're coming in from a mobile phone, so like whether they're donating to your site through their mobile phone or from their desktop. So it's not specifically a text to give campaign or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we're talking about kind of all being mobile responsive. Yeah, exactly. Giving a donation on your mobile phone. I definitely think there's some more options out there today, Ken, than there were even just a few years ago. I mean, it can be all of our stuff's mobile responsive right out of the box. And there's a lot more growth and movement towards that. So if you want to have a conversation afterwards, just let us know and we can point you in the right direction for some solutions if that's what you're looking for. Okay, so let's get into comparing audiences a bit. We're going to look at some of the demographic data. I think some of this will be a little bit surprising, but some of it might be kind of like, oh, okay, that's kind of what I would expect. So let's take a look at that. One thing that really stood out to us was this difference in giving by gender. And here's a couple of things that we kind of think, you know, is the cause of seeing more female donors across the board than male donors. Females are often donating to the household, which is what we found, that they're really representative of household giving. So in our data crunching, it doesn't necessarily mean that females give a lot more than males. It's just that they might be the ones actually going online and giving the donation, if that makes sense. All of that being said, I think this is interesting data to look at when thinking through your marketing strategy, how you're tailoring your messages, how you're segmenting your messages to different audiences, and really thinking through like, okay, as an example, let's say I want to run some Facebook ads for my peer-to-peer campaign. Should I do some different ads segmented? One that is more focused towards females and another one that's more focused towards males. So that's the sort of like insight and sort of strategy I think that you can take away from looking at this data and thinking through, again, applying it to your organization and what your organization's supporter base looks like. Kelly, Jamie, do you have anything else to add into this one?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I would just the one thing to add is behind how we're saying how women are often giving on behalf of a household. It's not called out in these slides here, but when we were looking at really the what we'll call the lifestyle clusters for all the donors across all three channels, the top groups all included families or couples, and so that's really what leads us to believe that a lot of this female giving is actually happening on behalf of the household. We see a really high propensity for folks to be at that stage in their life where they most certainly have a family, or at least are at a stable point with a partner.
Yeah, great point. Thank you for clarifying that.
So let's get into age. Obviously, people in all different age groups give across all different channels and are giving online. However, this kind of shows us that in a couple of particular age groups, you've got some younger audiences giving more to peer-to-peer, and you've got some older audiences giving more to your everyday giving. And I think that makes sense with what you're thinking, with kind of what we talked about earlier with, you know, those supporters who have maybe been supporting you for a long time or doing annual supporting versus the campaigns that are very targeted on kind of like gaining new donors and being very socially driven.
Yeah, and if you're starting to see some of these trends, you know, this might be why we're seeing more mobile giving in the peer-to-peer space. It might be why you're seeing more larger gifts in the everyday space when you're looking at some of these ages.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's another, you know, bit of a data fact to kind of back up the need for, if you're going to focus mobile efforts on your fundraising campaigns, I mean, you should do it across all campaigns, in my opinion, but particularly peer-to-peer. If you're trying to appeal to new younger audiences, you're trying to engage with millennials, as everyone's talking about, how do we engage more millennials, being really focused mobily on those efforts, I think will really drive more engagement.
Yeah, another thing to take away from this is which social channels you want to use. So if you're doing a peer-to-peer campaign, you might want to venture out and try Snapchat. If you're doing everyday giving, you might want to stay focused in the Facebook space. You know, these are things that you can use this data to help you in your marketing efforts.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's look at education. Again, I think looking at this information, you know, we see this is some of the stuff that I would kind of, you know, expect. Donors are all well educated across all channels, with nearly 90% having attended college, and you know, roughly around 25% across all channels having received some sort of a graduate level degree. So this one's interesting because it's pretty consistent across all channels. There's not a lot of differences. And again, the takeaway here is to kind of look at this data at a high level and think through, you know, how it applies to your organization, to your particular audience. Similar when looking at income level too, and Jamie's going to talk about this one a little bit, but we see that, you know, the majority of giving is coming from households who have an income of between 150 to 250,000 annually. So that's kind of the online trend. What's interesting to us is we see this, you know, increase in online giving. It's kind of from, you know, 30 to 40,000, 40 to 50, 50 to 75, and 75 to 100. There's kind of this large increase, and then it kind of dips again and drops, and then it gets higher again. I know, Jamie, you had some thoughts on why you think that might be.
Yeah, so we wanted to call this out, and frankly, we don't know the specific reason for this drop in the middle as income increases. It could be a psychological wealth barrier where folks feel, you know, that more of their income can be made for donations, and then that feeling goes away for whatever reason until 150, or perhaps we're looking at more families after 100,000, since this is household income, and therefore a lot of that income might be going towards raising kids and less is actually available for donation. So there's a lot of factors that could be making this up. Whatever it is, we did think it was absolutely worth calling out, and as you can see, it's a pretty substantial drop from that kind of 100,000 income level down and then back up again at 150. In addition, you can see how it trails off at the upper ends of income. And we suspect that a lot of the giving from these donors in the kind of wealthiest of the wealthiest is coming through other planned giving channels. And so this graph might not be a true representation of their comparative giving levels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's interesting for thinking through if you're doing any sort of like, segmenting based on, like wealth segmenting or data analysis or anything like that, thinking through which ones are the most apt to giving the greatest amount online and focusing your online efforts there. Because yes, as Jamie said, obviously we think those who are in the highest income echelons are probably giving through other ways to your organization and not necessarily like going online to donate $25.
So we did have a question come in from Tamara asking if this data is US only or if it's mixed with other countries. And it's mostly US, but Giving Day donations come from all over, and we do have some Giving Days that take place in other countries. So so it is mixed.
It's mixed. I would say the majority of it is all US based though, but there is a mix. There are some Giving Day organizations that work with us in a couple of other countries, but it's mostly US based. Good question. Here's something interesting that we thought, was particularly interesting to call out, and that's to look at, okay, if people are starting to give more online, how does this correlate to their online purchase behavior in general? And what was interesting about this is across all channels, we still found that the majority of people are not really necessarily going online to shop and to buy products for themselves, but they are still going online to give. So I don't necessarily think that looking at online purchase behavior is necessarily a factor of whether or not someone's going to give online. Anecdotally, I think that that's probably because, people they're just more tied to their mobile phones these days, or their laptops or their tablets, and people are often sharing, hey, on Facebook, hey, will you support me on this peer-to-peer campaign, or there's this Giving Day going on, and so people are already online and they're gonna go and donate online because it's easier to do that than to write a check, versus people maybe still wanna go to the store to pick out their products that they're buying for themselves. So we thought that was kind of particularly interesting, that philanthropy is driving more online transactions. So Kelly's our social media person here at Cambria, and she's going to talk about kind of some of the trends that we saw that were interesting to us across channels in terms of social presence.
Okay, so if you are looking at this chart, then you'll see that we are still seeing Facebook and LinkedIn as the heavy users. And I just want to clarify that this data is, we took the donors and then James, you used a partner to see what profiles these people had. So this isn't necessarily that the donations came from these platforms, it's that the donors are on these platforms. So they have profiles on Facebook and LinkedIn and some on Twitter. So you'll see that out of the 3 top social, Twitter was the lowest in all 3 channels. And then at the bottom here, you're gonna see that, interestingly enough, the most socially active users were on Twitter. And you'll see that it's by a lot. So Giving Day donors have 3 times the audience that the other channels do. So what we want to point out here is that if you are doing a Giving Day, even if your donations are still coming in, if you're seeing it in your data that Facebook is still a driver from donations, which is what we're seeing here, you still want to make sure that you're promoting on Twitter, because your donors have really large audiences in that channel. And so they have the ability to share it with more people and reach a larger audience. So if we're using Twitter effectively, we could see more donations come in from that channel.
Yeah, and you'll see that in the, down there with the little Twitter birds there, that's particularly true for giving days. Donors who are involved in giving days have a greater reach and larger audience on Twitter than those who are participating in peer-to-peer campaigns or giving to your everyday campaigns. We also saw that, LinkedIn has a wide reach. And what's interesting about this too is earlier in the year, Jamie and us teamed up on another kind of analysis report, and we did see in that one as well that LinkedIn, I think on average, people who were very socially active on LinkedIn, on average, either raised more money or gave more money. So kind of interesting to look and start to tie together the revenue and donation data to how socially active people are on these various platforms. And just to reiterate, as Kelly said too, we do watch this. We see a lot of social engagement on Twitter for giving days. However, we don't see a ton of revenue being tied to that. But through kind of what we track on Google Analytics, we do see that most of the socially driven revenue for giving days and online campaigns is actually coming from Facebook. But the people are very active on Twitter. So it just kind of goes to show that focusing on both of them is important in terms of one maybe driving more engagement and another one driving more actual conversion. Jamie, do you have anything else to add to that one?
No, I think that's spot on. And the one thing that kind of call out from our last webinar was how what we were finding is that you couldn't necessarily say who was going to be a good donor based on the social profiles. You couldn't say that because someone had more followers, they were going to give more. But we absolutely noticed from that last report how the folks that were on social media, as a population, were giving more, and a little bit of the social pressures created through social media definitely have a strong effect on driving other people to participate in campaigns as well.
And I wanted to add about LinkedIn. Here you see that we are calling out that peer-to-peer donors have the highest percentages of LinkedIn profiles. And so just as a takeaway from this data, one thing that you can make sure you're doing is in your peer-to-peer campaigns and your toolkits, make sure that you're giving your fundraisers the tools to share on LinkedIn and to reach their networks that way, because we know that they're younger donors, they are active in their careers and their jobs, and so they are probably sharing it with their coworkers to have them donate. So make sure you're giving them tools.
Yeah, great point, Kelly.
Great, and Mandy, this is exactly why we're doing reports like this, is to help you all with this. But so yeah, she's saying that she's been ignoring LinkedIn, so thanks for the tip. So make sure that you're using at least those 3 social channels. And like we said earlier, if you want to start playing with Snapchat for some, then that's fun too. But really, we're seeing Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter still as being the leaders.
Yeah, I'm loving LinkedIn these days. I don't know, I feel like I used to ignore it too, but I've been noticing a lot more engagement there. And yeah, I think it's a lot of good, very worthwhile content engagement. So yeah, as Kelly said, great way to help and coach your fundraisers and participants into how they share with their professional network, in addition to their more family and friend-based network that might be like on Facebook. Okay, so let's kind of wrap it up with the last section that we want to look at, kind of comparing what types of organizations these donations are going to. So where's the money going in terms of like nonprofit verticals? In our study, we found that 51% of everyday giving donations are going to education. We found that 70% of giving day donations are going to education. And we found that 43% of peer-to-peer donations are going to human services. So those are the most widely given to verticals across channels in all of the data that we studied. Now, I want to say a few things on this. So we did have donations that ranged across all major nonprofit verticals. So, education, environmental and animals, health, human services, public society benefit, arts and culture, and international and foreign affairs. I'll say this. We work with a lot of higher ed institutes who do giving days with us. We work with a lot of community foundations who do giving days with us. So I do think that this might kind of look like, is this the online giving universe? And I will say, it's a piece of it, right? I don't think that this is necessarily the whole universe. I do think it's skewed a little bit just in kind of looking at the types of organizations that are like doing giving days. And we do see a lot of higher ed institutes who do giving days. So I think that's why we see that number being so high in that particular vertical of the nonprofit space. I also think it means that there's opportunity for growth and for room for other verticals to be thinking about other ways to fundraise through some of these other channels like giving days. So Kelly, I don't know if you and Jamie have any other thoughts on that one.
I don't. Jamie, do you?
No, I think that's about it. Definitely important to note the bias there, and then realistically, I don't think there's a huge takeaway on an organizational level, as all of this kind of has to be taken in the context of where does your organization sit amongst this.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so you might be thinking, where do I go from here? Again, here's kind of our takeaways from all of this. Looking at this high-level data is interesting to identify trends, but some trends might or might not be applicable to your particular organization. I think what's important is to look at the trends and take that and kind of digest it, think about your audience, and think about, okay, based on these trends, this is where I should be focused, or because there is a lot of growth there, or even based on these trends, this is where I should be focused because other people in my vertical aren't doing this, and that's a real opportunity for me to kind of stand out and do something different. So those are just a couple of thoughts that I think are important to keep in mind when you're looking at this sort of high-level data. Interesting to look at the trends and then think through, like, how do I want to attack my my strategy and my marketing plans for the different types of online fundraising campaigns that I'm either doing or that I'm wanting to do. So Kelly and Jamie, you might have some more thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Just as far as making sure you put this into context, a lot of our recommendations here are based on the Kimbia's team's collective experience and our experience with Strength in members, and so we're really looking at the data and making these large generalizations. But for your organization, perhaps there's a very obvious reason based on your cause why you wouldn't maybe tailor your marketing to females as the primary givers, or why you wouldn't follow some of this advice. And for some of this advice absolutely rings true, such as definitely make sure every donor channel is mobile optimized. So just making sure that you really take all of this and then put it through the filter of what you know as your organization, since you absolutely know that better than we do.
Yeah, for sure. So if you'd like to get in touch with Jamie and his team over at Strength in Members, let's say you want more help kind of understanding and doing all of the crunching of your data, they are a great resource to work with to do that. You can reach out to them directly at info@strengthinmembers.com. If you are looking for solutions to fundraise online, or maybe you're already fundraising online, and maybe some of you, I know some of our clients are on here, are already working with us in one capacity, but you kind of see this and it makes you think, maybe I could be doing this different type of campaign, then just reach out to us. at info@kimbia.com. We'd love to talk to you more about that. Again, just as a reminder, I do have the report available in the handouts panel on the GoToWebinar panel. If you want to download that, you can. And we will be sending it in a follow-up email along with the recording and the slides for this presentation. So Kelly, I know you've got the questions box open. Do we have any additional questions at this time?
Nothing new. If you guys have questions, please type them in. We'd love to answer them. I know we still have about 20 minutes left. So if we don't get any questions the next few minutes, we'll go ahead and give you guys your day back, your afternoon back.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it. We hope that you find this useful and informative. And again, if you've got questions about it that you think about and you share it with other members of your team, and then you've got further questions from that, just reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you and give you more insight into kind of how we did this, or more insight into how we could help you with your online campaigns and strategies and efforts.
All right, thank you guys for some of the positive feedback we're getting in. I still don't have any questions, but I am getting nice remarks that make me feel good.
Aw, that's always nice. Cool. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We're going to sign off, and just be looking in your inbox for a recording and the slides after the fact. Have a great day.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.